Okay, everyone, I think we're going to get started. I'm sure people will join us once they get Geraldine's email, and otherwise it will be a nice group amongst friends, as Sally is so lovely saying. So hello, everyone. Welcome to the celebration of PEDro's 25th anniversary. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Garna people, the traditional custodians on the land on which I'm located, and pay my respect to their elders past and present. I also extend my respect to Indigenous people around the world and recognize their enduring connection to land, culture, and community. So my name is Kim van Schoten, and I'm honored to be your host for today. Like all of us here, I'm a passionate supporter of evidence-based practice, which is why I got involved with PEDro. And some of my work on falls prevention may be in the PEDro database, although most would fall under DITA, which is PEDro's sibling database focused on the accuracy of diagnostic tests. And I'm very excited to celebrate this huge milestone with you all. So we've got a very packed schedule today, even more than now with a little late start. So let me start with some quick housekeeping. You can turn on your captions in Teams. And please keep your microphone unmuted to minimize any background noise. Feel free to post any comments, questions, or thoughts in the chat. And if time allows, we might run a Slido poll. For any technical issues, please contact Geraldine via Teams. Just note that the session is being recorded and it will run for about an hour or a bit shorter now. Our schedule includes welcome from PEDro supporters, outlining how they use PEDro in their organization and practices. It also has international guests and videos about the history and impact of PEDro. And we hope to have time for questions and comments at the end of the hour. So please put them in the chat as they arise. Our first speaker today is Dr. Rick Dawson, an aged care physiotherapist, former managing director of HL Physiotherapy, and the president-elect of the Australian Physiotherapy Association. He might be replaced by Kathy tonight because I think Rick is having some technical issues. So we will hear from Kathy, who will do the APA, the Australian Physiotherapy Association, welcome here with us now.
Indeed, I'll step in on behalf of Rick as actually a member of the a fellow of the College of Physiotherapy. So, and as Rick's PhD supervisor, so I think I can speak on his behalf. So yeah, and Rick spoke very eloquently when we had the live session in Australia celebrating the 25 years of PEDro. The Australian Physio Association has been a long-term supporter of PEDro since the beginning. We'll have the next slide. Thanks, Kim. Yeah, actually, yes, and basically. Yeah, the Australian Physio Association has set up a number of milestones for training of physiotherapists, and really the use of evidence is crucial to those. And they also report that the use of evidence, and particularly PEDro, is also crucial in their approach to advocacy, and really aiming to sort of focus more on advocacy and on really communicating the benefits of physiotherapy, as associations are around the world. And yeah, Rick also said that the APA is committed to an ongoing support of PEDro and empowering members to engage with research and apply it in their everyday practice. And that by fostering a deeper understanding of evidence-based practice, they aim to enhance the quality of care, ultimately leading to better outcomes for patients. And really working together, we can all bridge the gap between research and practice and ensure that physiotherapists in Australia and around the world are well equipped to deliver the highest standard of care. Yeah, thank you very much. Back to you, Kim.
Thank you so much, Kathy, and thank you for doing the welcome on behalf of the API, which is one of our bigger sponsors at PEDro. So next up we have Corey Bergen, and he is a professor at the University of Oslo and the director of the Review and Health Technology Assessment of the Norwegian Institute of Public Health. He is also an expert on practical evidence-based physiotherapy, and he even co-authored the textbooks on that. So Corey Bergen, it's your turn.
Thank you very much, Kim, and hello everybody from Oslo. It's -6 degrees this morning in Oslo, so it's rather cold. So I have to wear an extra jacket today. But I'm Corey Bergen Hagen. I've been a clinical physiotherapist for some years and a researcher for many years. And I'm now a director of Reviews and Health Technology Assessment at the Norwegian Institute of Public Health. I am very happy to have this opportunity to celebrate the 25th anniversary of PEDro. I'm so old that I can still remember when 4 young academic physiotherapists, Rob Herbert and Mosley, Kathy Sharrington and Chris Meyer, launched the PEDro. In the very early years or stages, it seems like a valuable resource, and I can still remember I met up with Rob and Ian Chalmers in Oxford when Rob enthusiastically told about this resource, and Ian at that time was very happy to support. I think he gave or some substantial contribution to the PEDro at that time. But since then, of course, many people have contributed to make it grow. It has now been a crucial supporter of the physiotherapists, and I would add other health professions as well, globally. And it's obviously support clinicians who seek to use the best available evidence. It supports clinical trialists who need to know what is being investigated. And from my perspective here, it supports systematic reviewers by providing the most comprehensive coverage of trials of physiotherapy interventions. And I will say that the PEDro goes beyond the interest of physiotherapists only. We use the resource in our work, and it's a very comprehensive and valuable resource for us. And of course, at last but not at least, it supports clinicians who want to get better evidence-based practice. In addition, the PEDro team have published many papers that give important feedback to the profession about where they can improve the methods and reporting of trials and reviews, which is very important. And I will say, as an old researcher now, it had said PEDro has set very high standards for how to report and improve methods, or improve methods and not at least reporting trials. So I will say both congratulations and a warm thank you to all the volunteers and hard workers who have been involved in maintaining PEDro for so long. Very, very well done. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's lovely to hear. And also lovely to hear your perspective of being there at the inception, or at least seeing the early starts of PEDro. We will now go into a video with a short overview of PEDro for those that are a little bit less familiar.
So I'm an avid PEDro user. So I've used PEDro as a clinician, but also as an academic and as a researcher. So I think PEDro is important because I think it helps me to locate the high quality evidence in a shorter time. Then that would of course influence the what I teach and also influence the treatments that are being delivered.
Community is really important, and physiotherapists form a great community. So I'm sure many people will kind of get it when I say you always know somebody somewhere. So we have a great community of practitioners, and I think that's the first thing I like about PEDro. It's, you know, focused in to our community, and it's selecting evidence that's appropriate to our community.
We're awash with all kinds of dodgy journals out there. So to have a trusted resource to go to where you can reliably access knowledge around what is the evidence, what is reliable evidence for this condition, I think is absolutely critical. But actually to have an independent body that's not got vested interest to say, hey, what is the evidence for this? That's so important for us as a profession, and for clinicians to go, I can trust this as a source of reliable, accurate knowledge.
Amazing. So next up, we will have a testimonial of one of our supporters, Stefan Heggenscheid. Stefan is a practicing physiotherapist with different roles in research and teaching, and as a professional advisor of the German Physiotherapy Association, Physio Deutschland. He is also the association's international representative and an advocate for evidence-based physiotherapy.
Yeah. Hello, welcome everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to say some words here at this great event. Coming from a personal perspective, when I started my professional training in 1997, there was no word in Germany about evidence-based practice in physiotherapy. And I then qualified in 2000, starting to read my first papers and questioning some of what I had been taught. And somebody told me PEDro was there, but to be honest, I didn't know what to make of this information, really. So 1 year later, I entered the first CPD training courses that have been offered in Germany with regards to evidence-based practice skills. And this was difficult. To identify relevant papers, I needed to use the one desktop computer in range, which had a stable internet connection. There was no mobile phones or whatever. And my grasp of research methodology in a foreign language was really limited. But PEDro was there. And then I went on in my professional career and became a practicing specialist, which simultaneously increased my need to identify papers of both relevance and quality. And how cool would it be to become one of those people who were actually able to rate trials according to the PEDro scale, to become a PEDro rater? And PEDro was there. A little while later, after taking on a role as lecturer, I was keen to share my understanding of PEDro as a valuable resource for my German colleagues. But I noticed that many of them had some difficulties in terms of the language. So wouldn't it be great to have some sort of some of the PEDro key features accessible in German? And PEDro was there. And over the years, I've seen many students utilizing PEDro for their studies and thesis. And however, more and more questions came up on how to identify high quality papers covering areas that may not really have been included in PEDro, such as diagnostic tests. And then at some point, I was able to answer, well, but PEDro is there. Moving on to become a professional advisor for the German Physiotherapy Association, well, it is only natural to receive queries on our association's expenses from time to time, and supporting PEDro does come up in this regard. But however, I'm always looking forward to this because this is a very easy one. Wherever I go in Germany, there will be a colleague who shares my journey with PEDro. As an association, we have incorporated PEDro in many projects, and today, for every year, I have approximately 200,000 examples from Germany of somebody raising a question and somebody else saying, wait a minute, PEDro is there. So on behalf of the German Physiotherapy Association, I would very much like to thank everybody involved with PEDro, the founders, the staff, the volunteers and other supporters for the great work they've done over the past 25 years. And during this quarter of a century, from our perspective here in Germany, PEDro has become an indispensable institution in global physiotherapy, and we are very much looking forward to what we can achieve together in the future.
Awesome. Thank you, Stefan. It's great to hear these words and to hear how much you're getting out of it. And also thank you for putting so much effort in there as well. So next up, we've got a video that will summarize the history, or the 25 years of history of PEDro in about 5 minutes.
At one stage in the School of Physiotherapy at the University of Sydney, lecturers were given the opportunity to run elective subjects, and I ran one on using clinical trials to make clinical decisions. The assignment for it required that students go and find 3 clinical trials on a question of their interest and critically appraise them. So over the period of several years, I accrued several hundred randomised trials. So I remember talking to Kathy about it, and we thought, oh, this is a pretty valuable resource. We could do something with this. And we put our heads together and we decided that there's this new thing called the internet, and we might put it on the internet. And we put it on a PC in the lab and got PEDro up and running.
I think I realised when I travelled, because I could be in places in South America and people wouldn't know who I was. But once you mentioned PEDro, their eyes would light up and things would warm. And so, yeah, I guess I realised at that point in time, we'd created something which had global recognition, which is pretty extraordinary. And so that was probably within 5 or so years of developing PEDro. So it's amazing that you could reach all these different parts of the world so quickly.
I really realised we were onto a good thing when 2 organisations really helped us, the Australian Physiotherapy Association and also the Motor Accidents Authority of New South Wales. And they provided seed funding for us to get started, which was really pivotal. But more importantly, they provided some recurrent funding, and the Australian Physiotherapy Association is still an important funder of PEDro. And it was their vision for wanting to improve patient outcomes and not having to get something out of it, like it was the philanthropic doing something good for physiotherapy in New South Wales, Australia and the world, that they really invested in it.
I think for me, the most mind-blowing thing was when Anne started working out how to actually record the statistics from the website. And then we really realised, how many countries around the world were actually using PEDro and the absolute number of users.
We started off having 50 concurrent users, and so now there's a new search initiated every 10 seconds, and it's used across the globe. So, for example, in countries that are experiencing quite a lot of hardship at the moment, like the Ukraine, physiotherapists are still using PEDro to guide practice. And so hopefully we're influencing the quality of care in countries that are really struggling because of other issues.
Many physiotherapists won't realise that as recently as the 1990s, really there was very little research going on in physiotherapy. And I think PEDro had a role in turning that around and making people look specifically at evidence of the effectiveness of interventions rather than just at the mechanisms or hypothesised mechanisms behind things.
My proudest moment with PEDro was when I was awarded the Mildred Elson Award by the then World Confederation for Physical Therapy in 2019. And I received the award because of my contribution to physiotherapy because of PEDro. And I feel like I was hogging the limelight there because the real star of the show was PEDro. PEDro winning this amazing, prestigious award was a great validation of the importance of PEDro globally.
To me, another factor in the kind of global engagement is the number of different languages that the website has been translated into. And that's, again, Anne's hard work with making connections from people all around the world to, volunteer to actually translate elements of the website.
Yeah, and for us, that's an international expression of people's goodwill and their enthusiasm and altruism.
I think, to me, the most amazing feedback has been when we've attended the World Physiotherapy Congresses, and we hold stalls on PEDro at those congresses, and the number of people who genuinely come up from countries all around the world and talk about how they've contributed to PEDro or how they're using PEDro, and how PEDro makes a difference in their practice is quite mind-blowing.
Well, the challenge is that we've got an exponential growth in research, which in one way is good, but it then makes the cost of running PEDro quite high and growing exponentially each year, which you would understand. And so I think that is the challenge. You have to look to technology to provide the solution to that challenge. Obviously we can't turn off research. That'd be a pretty silly way to solve the problem. So really we've got to get a technological solution so that we can archive and synthesize and make available the evidence. And so it's on that side of the equation that we need to get something happening.
Well, it's great to hear from these trailblazers in physiotherapy research. And our next guest is Professor Sally Lamb. Sally is a Pro Vice Chancellor and Executive Dean of the Faculty of Health and Life Sciences at the University of Exeter. And she is an international recognized scholar in aging, disability, and rehabilitation. She's also an experienced methodologist in the area of clinical trials and high-quality evaluation of healthcare practice. Sally.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kim, and good morning to everybody. Well, congratulations. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And I was trying to think a little bit about what I might say. So I wanted to take a step back, actually, and really think about the contents of PEDro. We've heard a lot about PEDro, the database, but less about actually what's in there and what does it mean. So like other people on this call, I started my career at a time when the internet was just emerging, email, barely heard of. I mean, that was something Americans had, not us. That was the time when PEDro started. It was also the time when physiotherapists started to ask themselves about, does their practice work? So I started my first clinical job in Oxford, and it was an amazing experience. I mean, well, it was amazingly good and bad. So when I went into clinical practice, I was struck by the hours of chest percussion on people who'd had kidney replacement 4 times a day, no evidence whatsoever that it prevents anything. And it was mind-numbingly boring as far as I was concerned when I started my career. So, I really kind of questioned whether physiotherapy works. And then this guy turned up on the trauma ward, Professor David Sackett, and he is the godfather of evidence-based medicine. He turned up with his trolley of books. In those days, you could kind of carry books round, journals round in books, and he'd ask at the end of the bed, what's the evidence for this treatment? So that was the beginning of the evidence-based movement. And I think it really stimulated many of us in physiotherapy to start thinking about how do we curate and generate. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the generation. I'll come back to the curation. Generate high quality evidence about practice. And I have to say, our profession has been unbelievably excellent in doing this. We certainly in the UK, and I don't see why it would be any different anywhere else, we have collectively generated extremely high quality evidence of our practice. I am now able to believe myself in, kind of really vast areas of practice. I'm able to know that if I spend my time doing this with a patient, there is a good chance that they are going to benefit from it, and I can choose what I do. But our profession has absolutely cracked it. And what's included in PEDro is the most unbelievably rich resource of clinical trials, reviews, and very high quality clinical guidance. And PEDro encapsulates what I think is the achievement of our profession. So well done to PEDro. Thank you for curating. Thank you for making sure that this is all accessible, and incredibly well done to the profession for generating this level of evidence and for us to be able to showcase, share, and improve patient outcomes through this evidence base. So congratulations, PEDro. Happy birthday. Long may it carry on.
Thank you so much, Ed. It's lovely to hear, Sally. Thank you. Next, we will hear from Dr. Chie Yamato, who will speak about PEDro's resources. And Chie is a research fellow at the University of Sydney and Nepean Blue Mountains Local Health District. She's also a research affiliate at the Universidad Cicada de Sao Paulo, and she's been involved in PEDro for about 10 years now and is the co-chair of the Brazilian Satellite Center. So Chie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kim. So yeah, it's a great pleasure to be here today. And how can I, and so today I'll talk a little bit about the resource that PEDro has been developed over the last 25 years. And I thought it would be great to start thinking a little bit about the physiotherapy as a profession. So we all know the challenge that we face to implement evidence-based practice, but we also know that the patient outcome and the success of the treatment really depends on this. So aiming to inform physiotherapy practice, PEDro has lots of very interesting and important resources available that I will talk a little bit about today. So for today's presentation, I decided to share some key milestones, but of course, PEDro offers much more than that, and you can always check on the website. But the first one that I would like to talk today is the database itself. And so the database is really the backbone of PEDro, in my opinion, and it's like the library of physiotherapy evidence. At the beginning, it was just a pile of printed articles, but today we have over 63,000 systematic reviews, trials, and guidelines. So PEDro's reach is huge in terms of how it has been used over the globe, and PEDro is assessed by more than 215 countries with more than 10,000 daily searches and with one search every 10 seconds. The second milestone, I would say, is the PEDro scale. And this is like a report card for research. And if the database is the library, I would say the scale is the librarian, ensuring that you find the best research. The third one is all the training program and the different campaigns, including the video tutorials that PEDro provide. And I choose two to be mentioned here today. So the first one is the PEDro Tackle Barriers campaign that aim to hear about physios complaint to evidence-based practice and to provide insights on how to break down those barriers. And the second one is the PEDro scale training that teach how to assess physiotherapy trials for methodological quality. And so if you're not familiar with the PEDro scale training, this QR code will take you to the page. And the last one, but not least, is the Worldwide Journal Club. So the Journal Club was launched in 2020, and it has been a great success in generating discussion around the latest research for a certain field. And so key studies addressing important gaps in evidence are selected, and then discussion is usually generated to explore how we can implement those insights to improve care. So if you want to check out all the journal clubs available, you can simply scan the QR code. And so PEDro has been changing the future of the physiotherapy, impacting physiotherapy practice globally. And I would like to show some examples of this. So the first one, I think, is really the internationalization. So today, PEDro speaks 17 languages, and this means that physiotherapists all around the world can access evidence-based resources in their native language. And this may sound a bit trivial, but we should probably remember that language is one of the biggest barriers to access and use evidence-based practice. So this is a huge achievement, in my opinion. The second one is the evidence in your inbox, and this is probably the easiest way to keep you updated. And so PEDro can send you all the new evidence on a specific area of your choice, which is very convenient. And again, last but not least, we have the newsletter. And so the newsletter brings information on the latest developments and research. And so again, if you're not familiar with those resources, you can simply scan the QR code. And so to finish today, I just would like to say that from those very smart and special people, we are now a huge community. And today, more than a PEDro collaborator, I am here as a Brazilian physiotherapist that recognize how PEDro has changed the profession and the professionals, especially in my country, in the past 25 years. And it's just amazing to see how PEDro provides resources that are vital for a better clinical practice. So I just would like to thank you and to ask for us all to continue hold hands and keep PEDro alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Tretje. Our next guest is the co-director of PEDro, so that's Professor Mark Elkin. Mark is a clinical associate professor at the University of Sydney and the Sydney Local Health District.
So if you go to the resources tab on the PEDro homepage, you will see a number of papers published by the PEDro team categorized under these headings. So some of them are to do with evidence-based practice, some are to do with the content of PEDro, some are to do with the usage of PEDro or the PEDro scale, and so on. People often like to see how these things accumulate over time, so I made this animation. In the beginning, it was mainly looking at the whole content of PEDro or a few papers on evidence-based practice. There was one on core physiotherapy journals and one on the PEDro scale. And then pretty quickly after that, we got into randomized trials and randomized trial quality. We looked a bit at systematic reviews, and then by then we were having papers on data and so on. And so this is kind of where things ended up. This is how much evidence has accumulated under each of these categories. People often like to see these animations more than once, so I'll just let it run again. I won't say as much this time, but just to point out that things accumulated very slowly for about the first 8 or 10 years, and then it was after that point that things really took off. Okay, so as I said, things accumulated very slowly initially and then they got faster. So I just want to point out a few papers from along this timeline, not necessarily the most important, but just a few key ones. So one is the very first paper that was published on PEDro by the instigators of the database. And this just described how the database worked and its content. And by a happy coincidence, the size of the database at that time was 1/25 of what it is now on its 25th birthday. The next paper that I want to talk about was this one by the same authors, which was published in response to when it was suggested that people go and read a trial, they responded that, that trials keep telling me that the interventions are ineffective. And so this paper showed that there was evidence for multiple interventions across multiple subdisciplines of physiotherapy where the treatment was effective. There's kind of a similar catch cry today when we recommend that maybe people go and read a Cochrane systematic review. They say, all Cochrane reviews say that the evidence is inconclusive. And I think back when the Cochrane Library first started, that was true, but gradually we are accumulating more evidence and reviews are gradually becoming more conclusive. A third paper that I want to talk about is this one, which has been cited over 5,000 times, and that's mainly because the PEDro scale is commonly used to rate the quality of included trials in an exponentially increasing number of systematic reviews, not just in physiotherapy now, but in medicine, nutrition, speech pathology, and so on. Probably a lot of the papers that are on that page of the PEDro website are what you might call grumpy report card papers. Feedback to the profession to say that the methods or the reporting of a particular type of study is not as good as it could be. One of the gratifying things, though, is that when we go back and look at how things have changed over time, we often see that things are improving, probably partly because of the report card paper, partly because of reporting guidelines, partly because your paper gets knocked back by a journal if the protocol wasn't registered, and so on. But in any case, things are improving, and so that's a good thing. And sometimes these papers spawn an initiative within the profession. So this paper looked at the use of 95% confidence intervals in the reporting of randomized trials. And one of the nice things about using PEDro as the content, as the fodder for your analysis, is that because we've shown that it is so comprehensive in its indexing, we can say that a random sample is a representative sample. And so this paper caused a lot of discussion among physiotherapy journal editors, and we got speakers in to talk to us about the issue, and we came up with a joint recommendation that we published in multiple journals encouraging people to use confidence intervals. And we have seen an improvement over time in the proportion of trials reporting confidence intervals. So just to finish, if you wanted to do a study using the content of PEDro as the fodder for that study, then please email me and I'll send you a template to guide us in drawing off the right data for you that you will need for your project. Okay, that's it from me. Thank you very much.
I will just continue. So up next, we will hear from, we're delighted to welcome Professor Maciej Plaszecki and Weronika Krebsowska. Maciej is professor at the University of Physical Education in Warsaw, Poland, and faculty in Biała Podlaska. He's also engaged in healthcare management as the vice director in a district hospital. He has led the first research and dissemination of evidence-based physiotherapy initiatives in Poland, including an international project called PRO-EBP, supported by PEDro. He has also worked on guideline development projects. Currently, he is leading an evidence implementation initiative in an outpatient rehabilitation facility for young people with neurodevelopmental disorders. And Veronica is a physiotherapist with clinical experience in neurological rehabilitation. She is a PEDro rater, co-author of the adaptation of clinical practice guidelines for physiotherapists in Poland. And she was involved in multiple research projects on evidence-based physiotherapy. She is professionally associated with the authority body for physiotherapy professional regulation in Poland, currently also on the World Health Organization Euro consultation on rehabilitation workforce, and she is responsible for technical support in member states. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good evening. I can offer you some good Polish accent, so I hope you will understand me. We are honored to take part in this exceptional meeting today. It is really important for us. We think this movement of PEDro is exceptional, and we hope it will continue and grow. Please let me read my message so that I'd like to be as specific and as concrete as possible. The Polish translation of PEDro was, as far as I remember, the 11th language version of the database, and it's invaluable content also for education, for the movement of evidence-based practice, for understanding of clinical trials and so on. To me, this is just one example of how crucial work has been done by you within this exceptional movement of the PEDro database. I think, and we think, that it is not just an evidence-based practice initiative. It is a process of enlightenment. by continuous helping and by giving the data, information and standards to professionals, to clinicians, to researchers, to students, and also to clients and patients for decision-making based on reason and critical thinking, not on tradition or dogma or anecdotes and so on. To us, the importance, the influence of PEDro is first in terms of ethics, and then later on knowledge and behaviors, attitudes, and so on. It is unethical to provide patients and clients with suboptimal care and with harmful, with care of not known evidence or absence evidence, and so on. There are over 70,000 registered physiotherapists in Poland. An evidence-based practice is being developed or introduced on the bottom-up individual basis rather than on the top-down curriculum or policy-based system or manner. For us, for the whole people, society, the movement, it makes PEDro even more important for us as a kind of a lighthouse. Through our journey with PEDro, we were first very much supported by Professor Anne Mosley, who especially taught us how to properly use the PEDro scale, which is, in my view, another exceptional achievement, which used ranges far from the physiotherapy field, including systematic reviewing, meta-research, and so on. Then Professor Margelkins contributed, and now we are in touch with Geraldine Wolbank and other members of your community. We do appreciate that. The evidence-based practice movement has been evolving, and it is not the same as it used to be, as it was at the very beginning in 1991 or 2, with the rise of evidence-based medicine, or even 25 years ago. New and important ideas and challenges have evolved, such as the importance of implementation science and the task of the classical hierarchy of evidence. We believe and hope that PEDro will remain and grow as the lighthouse of this movement for the physiotherapy profession and beyond for at least another quarter of a century. Thank you very much, and we wish you every success. We do appreciate that we are the part of this fantastic community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for those lovely words. What I did want to say, though, is that, as you all know, PEDro is growing, and so is the workload involved. So to keep PEDro free, we really need some support. So there's an opportunity to get involved by offering your services, but also by considering providing a donation. So we have the Buy PEDro a Coffee campaign. You might have seen it before. If you go to the website, it just pops up. You can donate by visiting the website and click on donate now. Thank you so much. Then I will go into a quick video about the PEDro raters.
The training was great. It was easy to follow. It took me through each of the steps in a time that suited me, and I was able to do it from the comfort of my own home.
It was self-paced, so I could pause and repeat content as much as I liked at any time. There was also support from the PEDro team if I had any queries throughout the training.
I could do it from where I live in rural South Australia. I could do it from the city. Being a PEDro grader is a really great way to improve my understanding of research and really sustain and build on how these papers apply to my patients. Being a PEDro rater has been a really rewarding way to contribute to the physiotherapy research profession.
Everyone has the potential to be a PEDro reviewer. I recommend all of my HDR students become involved as PEDro reviewers, and I've even had some undergraduate students get involved too.
Perfect. So next we'll hear from Associate Professor Mathieu Geuman from the University of Orléans. Mathieu is a physiotherapist and divides his time between lecturing to physiotherapy students, conducting research in the lab, and working at the hospital to enhance sensory motor control in individuals with amputations. He has led the French Physiotherapy Association since 2020, and additionally, Mathieu serves as the editor-in-chief of the European Rehabilitation Journal, an open access publication established 4 years ago. Mathieu, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So first of all, happy birthday, PEDro. 25 years, it's a great time. Still young, but full of energy. So thank you for the invitation to share a few words about the French activity. So as I said, from PEDro and the SFP, the French National Physiotherapy Association, it's kind of friendship since many years, and we always tried to involve a lot of French physio to be in some project regarding PEDro. So over the years, since 2010, a little bit, we have some translation project like the PEDro scale in French, who was validated. And then we increased the lecture to the students, and now the PEDro scale is taught to pretty much every school of physiotherapy in France, which is about 50 schools, which is great. And this improved the level of our students when they become physio, and that helped us to implement research project and research program after the entry level. So now the research in physiotherapy in France is growing, and this is because of PEDro. So thank you for that. It's really important for us. So here is actually the photo of the small French PEDro group that is involved in the SFP, in the French Physiotherapy Association. So it's a small group, but every year more and more people get involved, and we launch different projects. So, for example, we had translation of the training program ongoing. We also translate the infographic for students that it's spread in all different physio school. And now we try to have a group of people involved to be PEDro indexer, which will be a next step. And we plan to maybe one day being strong enough to be a satellite in France. And this couldn't be done without the lot of help that PEDro gave us and the regular meeting we have with Geraldine or with Katie. So it's really, really great. And thank you for all that. And I hope PEDro will grow and continue to do that and to help us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. So our next guest is Arno Thijssen from the Royal Dutch Society for Physiotherapy, and with a background in exercise therapy and clinical epidemiology, Arno aims to further improve collaboration between researchers and physical therapists to advance evidence-based practices in physical therapy. Thank you, Arno.
Thank you, Kim, and hello to you all. So I'm Arno Thijssen. I'm a policy worker for the Knowledge Center of the Royal Dutch Society of Physiotherapy. Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate PEDro on this beautiful 25th anniversary. Thank you for the invitation to celebrate this significant milestone with you all together. The Royal Dutch Society of Physiotherapy has been a partner of PEDro since 2010, and we're very proud to have made a contribution to the growth of this invaluable resource. So very happy. The PEDro work and its database are a great value and plays a crucial role in critically appraising and applying evidence-based knowledge for physiotherapists. And in the Netherlands, it's mostly widely used in education, supporting students and educators in accessing high quality information for learning and practice. And I've learned from Kim that with over 42,000 searches conducted in the Netherlands in the past year, we've been in the top 15 users of PEDro for over a decade. So that's wonderful news for us, and I'm very happy that it's widely used in the Netherlands. We deeply value our long-standing collaboration with PEDro, including the current involvement of Dr. Philip van der Wees. He's a Dutch professor and he's in the advisory board of PEDro. And although an attempt to establish a Dutch satellite it proved a little bit too challenging a short while ago, hopefully we can have it another go in the near future, but PEDro remains an indispensable tool for us, and it empowers Dutch physiotherapists to focus their time on applying latest and best evidence rather than spending time on searching it. So it has profoundly impacted physiotherapy, and we look forward for the many more successful years of PEDro. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Professor Maria Constantino, a physiotherapy professor at Southern Cross University in Australia, but she's in Cyprus at the moment. She's an Australian Physiotherapy Association titled Sports and Exercise Physiotherapist, a registered international sports physical therapist, a fellow of the Australian Sports Medicine Federation, and she has extensive clinical research and teaching experience.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to share my experiences with PEDro. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Rob and Chris and Kathy on their original ideas and inception and hard work to start PEDro, and the Australian Physiotherapy Association for supporting their ideas. You're young, but you have come so far, PEDro. It is wonderful to see. And my first encounters with PEDro came in the early 2000s, but more specifically in 2004, I was tasked with the job of organizing a physiotherapy session at the Pre-Olympic Congress in Thessaloniki in Greece. And the Australian Physiotherapy Association supported me in organizing 2 specific physiotherapy sessions at that international conference. And one of the sessions included a talk by Mark Brown on the use of PEDro. And that was the first time many of the physiotherapists, especially in Greece, had heard about PEDro, and they became very excited. And after that, they wanted to know how to use it more. And so that was really exciting for us to be able to share that and see with and see their excitement and be able to implement it. Then down the track, I was a coordinator for a Masters of Sports and Exercise Physiotherapy program. And as part of that, as part of my students' research involvement, I organized and negotiated with PEDro that they would all become PEDro raters. And I'm actually very proud to see that one of them featured in your video before, the PEDro video before, saying how much that graduate physiotherapists, sports physiotherapists said they enjoy being raters for PEDro. So thank you again for that opportunity. And more recently as well, in being supervising honor students and conducting systematic reviews, I also encourage them and organize for them to become PEDro raters so that they can be then qualified when they're doing they're rating their trials as part of their systematic reviews. So I think it's important for us as users of PEDro to train the next generation, to train them how to use it effectively and how to implement it, so that we can benefit not just all the physiotherapists and the clinicians and researchers, but also the wider community. So again, thank you, PEDro, for this opportunity, and thank you for all your work. Thank you to the PEDro team, and happy birthday.
Thank you, Maria. That's lovely. Next up, we will have Professor Kathy Sherrington, one of the co-founders of PEDro, that will say a few words. Thank you.
And
You're
I
muted.
can unmute. It's all good. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming along and for the the fabulous support, and how wonderful to hear about the history. And really, it has taken a global village. So these are some of our financial partners over the years. These are just our volunteer raters from 2024. Here's some of our other collaborators. The slide's a little bit slow. And here's various committees are also involved, and really looking to the future. As Chris said, the things are quite challenging. The size of the job gets bigger all the time, and we're really keen to sort of explore different aspects, different solutions, looking at AI, exploring new partnerships. We're open to advertising. We're happy to have advertising from around the world. So, really we'd love, your ongoing assistance as we take this next step and, really work and move towards the future. And so, here we are. We've got a code here, and we'll also send out the link as well. So, if people are able to sort of fill in a quick survey to sort of let us know what yourselves or others in your organisation, might be able to do to sort of further help PEDro. But we're incredibly grateful for everyone's contributions today and over the last 25 years. So thanks again, and I'll head back to Kim now.
Super, thank you. I wanted to thank you and Geraldine, you for your efforts, and Geraldine for organizing today, and also thank all of our speakers and our attendees for celebrating PEDro with us today. Together, we've built an incredible resource, and with your continued support, we look forward to the next 25 years and beyond. Thank you for joining us in celebrating, and we look forward to working together in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.